Big Deuce 6, Roger, 013, stand by.
Moment of the Stone Age, son!
Hey, son, no!
Now, Matt, go!
All right, now, let me take care of this. All right? Get that out of here!
Sorry.
Come here now. All right.
You better no, man. Sorry.
Jimmy!
Mark 12, 013, Roger. They need some napalm down in the tree line. Can you get twisted around trying to put it down here?
Right, 1-3, you were big as fuck with it. What's the target?
Trying to suppress some mortar fire off the tree line down there.
Roger, here we go.
Good. Give it all you got. Bring in all your ships. Wing abreast.
Let him back to me like chopper. Get him back to the hospital. Yes, sir. No. You gotta go with him. Come on, go. Get it out of here. And tell my guys I want my board.
Big Deuce 6, this is 013. The jet's being brought now. There, you got about 30 seconds on station. Get your people back and head down. This is going to be a big one.
Oh, yeah.
This place cleaned up and ready to Jimmy, son. Don't you worry. Give me those shorts. Mission with the air cam. Present for me and the boys. I want to see you do your stuff in them. Out there, okay?
F5s.
Son, nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. You know, one time we had a hail bomb for 12 hours. When it was all over, I walked up. We didn't find one of them, not one stinking dink body. The smell, you know, that gasoline smell. The whole hill.
That napalm smell smells like victory. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to BDR529, the show where the stories are made up and the points don't matter. Remember, this is an exhibition, not a competition. Please, no wagering. Just when you thought you didn't need another conservative libertarian radio show, guess what this is? It's exactly that. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is BDR529. I'm BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin, trying out an experiment because, after all, according to my shameless contract, this studio right here, I get to use it frequently. And you know, sometimes you just need to come on and express yourself. Well, this is an expression of sort of a free flow tabula rasa, if you will, where because of the insanity of the world, and trust me, the world has gone, in fact, fucking insane. Don't you ever sit down and think, I wish I could find one molecule of sanity just in today? Hallelujah, brother and sister. You have found it. And it's right here, courtesy of the SHR Media Network and the Bloviating Zeppelin himself. It's BDR529. No guarantees it's ever going to be on again. No guarantees it won't. No guarantee it's going to be a terrible show. No guarantees it's going to be any kind of a show except anything and everything that I've assembled over into this computer over here at the last damn second just because I wanted to. Now, having said that, the funny thing is, There are a lot of things that I've wanted to play on my show. And for those who don't know, I'm the bloviating Zeppelin, live and direct on the SHR Media Network. This is my lava lamp. This is the Ridley Scott commemorative lava lamp. Oh, give it about a half hour, and you'll understand why. And it's to my left, your right. And what that signifies is this. If you happen to be listening to the show live on the SHR Media Network, that means you're just using the ossicles on the side of your head, your Gesicht. But if you want to watch, you can watch on the SHR Media YouTube channel. You can watch on the SHR Facebook page. And later on in the show, this little thingy right here will do a dance. There were so many things that I wanted to talk about in my show. I have a show on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night. It's at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. And it goes way late if you're back in the East. Not so late if you're out here on the far left coast, like we are right here in the resplendent SHR Media studios. And for those of you who have never tuned in before, because who knows how popular this may or may not be, or anything about the background of myself, moi, your host, this very studio happens to be broadcasting out of Sacramento, California. That, by the way, is the capital of the state of California, and it is the locus of evil on the entire West Coast. I should wager perhaps it's the locust of evil. Locust? It could be the locust of evil, but it is the locus of evil. Perhaps in the United States, perhaps even so far as to say, the world. It's gone insane. California has officially gone insane. My magnum opus on the regular BZ's Bloviating Zeppelin Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is coming perhaps sometime next week. A plug, shameless plug for my show. Melanie Colette is scheduled to be on my show next Tuesday. And if you know anything about Melanie Colette, the money diva, you'll want to be here to listen to her as I ask her about Bitcoin and about a continuing guaranteed wage and about the removal, the entire wholesale removal of cash from society. Can it occur? But in any event, there were so many crazy things happening Tuesday and Thursday that I just didn't get to because I had some great guests on earlier in the week. And I thought, okay, why not see if I can put some more stuff that I really wanted to talk about, politics, etc., and some other things. I've said for a long time I talk about politics, economics. Well, maybe it's past due for me to talk about some economics. Now, while you're listening to this, some of you may not be aware of who Phil Donahue was. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, he hosted a television radio show. A television show. And one day he had on Milton Friedman, who is essentially the Economist's economist. And if you never heard the tete-a-tete between Milton Friedman, an economist, and I won't say a right-wing, but I will say a free-thinking economist, and Phil Donahue, who is massively a leftist, you've had something left out of your life. And trust me, after this, do I have... You folks, you want rants. Maybe not ants in your pants, but rants. I think you've come to the right place, especially if you come and listen and continue to listen after this.
He has done in this most important book titled Free to Choose. Please welcome the Nobel laureate in economics, Milton Friedman. Right here.
By the way, Milton Friedman's book, Free to Choose, is something that you definitely ought to pick up in Kindle. If you want to understand how economics really works, along with Thomas Sowell's works, Milton Friedman, Free to Choose. And here we go.
Here he comes again, Milton Friedman, and boy, does he make an entrance now, because this is a blockbuster book, Free to Choose, which, not surprisingly, features a very attractive, flattering, professorial picture of our guest on the front. We feminists can only wonder we can only wonder how they would respond to this. the fact that the book is co-authored by Professor Friedman's wife, Rose, and to what location do you suppose she has been relegated?
You've got that wrong. Don't you know that the best always comes last?
Okay.
Nice try, Phil.
All right, let's go over this now.
And you have to admit that she's prettier.
You certainly do have to admit that. It's not difficult to admit that at all. As a matter of fact, that you do seem to have it all, Professor Friedman. If you just take a personal aside here for some, you're well married. You're married for what?
41 years.
41 years to the same woman.
Same woman, of course. We met down here at the University of Chicago in my first graduate course in economics.
She was a student?
She was a student, too. We were fellow students.
Oh, I see. So you never did presume to teach her then?
Oh, no. This is when I was first starting.
That's probably why you've been married 41 years. And you also enjoy the prestige of the Nobel Prize. You are the counselor to presidents and to presidential candidates. It's really a wonderful spot to be. And this is, this is the last thing your mother would expect my son, the economist, to have become, a celebrity.
You are absolutely right. Unfortunately, she died many years ago. But I want to put one salt note in that. People often fail to distinguish between giving advice and having it taken.
And
I've given advice to many presidential aspirants. It hasn't always been taken. In fact, most of the time it hasn't been.
I think we can assume that it's certainly not being taken now.
Well, I haven't given any advice to President Carter.
But none has been solicited, I think.
None has been solicited. But that really doesn't matter, because I publish my views in Newsweek and other areas. Anybody who wants to know my opinions or my views has them readily available. Nobody has to call me on the telephone to find out.
Yeah.
The only time I talked to President Carter was in the interim between his election and his inauguration, when there was an absolutely hilarious incident. He tried to call me to congratulate me on the Nobel Award, and he told his secretary to get Milton Friedman. Well, it so happened there was a speechwriter in Jerry Ford's White House called Milton Friedman. This is in the interim after Jerry Ford has been turned out. And all of a sudden the telephone rings and Milton Friedman in the White House hears President-elect Carter is on the phone and he thinks Santa Claus is coming.
Sure, he's going to. This will be the unprecedented act of being asked to come on another administration. Wow.
But it turned out he was really trying to get me, and he finally got me up in Vermont where we were at the time.
Let me see if I can express in very imprecise terms and very briefly what has the core of your statement here, a personal statement. We have too much government. We are not allowing the free enterprise system to work as your most favored historical figure, Adam Smith, suggested it would work if we just let things alone.
2.
We have too much government intervention.
3.
It is interrupting the not only the wonderful work that the invisible hand does if we leave it alone,
4.
but it's also depriving people of personal liberties.
5.
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's a very good summary.
Fill in the blanks for me.
No, that's a very good summary. There is a very important role for government to play, but there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. And government has been growing beyond bounds. Right now, to take the simplest measure.
By the way, this is back in 1980. These things are being said. Common sense actually existed way back in 1980.
The government spending at federal, state, and local levels amounts to over 40% of the income of the people of the country. If you go around and ask people, are you getting your money's worth for that 40% of your income which is being spent on your behalf, supposedly, by government, there are very few people who will say yes. And they are right. We're not getting our money's worth. Much of it is, it's not merely that it's being wasted. It's that it's being wasted in a very particular sense. You're spending money to do opposite things. Here at one place, we're spending our money to try to propagandize us not to smoke. In another place, we're spending our money to subsidize the growing of tobacco. Now, what sense does it make to spend 2 streams of money like that? And you can go over and over again and find exactly the same thing. The government is too big. It's too intrusive. It restricts what we can do. It's becoming our master instead of our servant, and we've got to react against it and cut it down to size.
Thank you. Words of wisdom, which is why you're listening to this now.
All right, let's share with the people at home just one of the statements of Adam Smith that you refer to in your book, which, of course, when I want it, I'm not going to be able to... oh, it's on page 2. All right, thank you. All right, I've excerpted from your book, as you have from Adam Smith, so we can both, with apologies to Adam Smith, from whom permission was not granted for this, but here is what...
Phil's pretty good, but he doesn't communicate with the next world.
All right. By pursuing his own interest, that is to say, his meaning the person engaged in free enterprise, the person who functions within the capitalist free enterprise system, Adam Smith says, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectively than when he really intends to promote it. Smith says, I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good, meaning spare me from the do-gooders. Spare me from the people who intend to do good. Smith is saying if you honestly seek your own self-interest within the free enterprise system, society will be the beneficiary.
That's right.
That's a hard thing to...
But take the last part of that. I've never known
see that
much,
again, Ronnie.
I've never known much good done. No, I don't have to see it. I've never known much good done by those who affected to trade for... Affected. Note he doesn't say did trade. Affected to trade for the public good.
Tried to trade.
Now, that word affected is a very important point, because you must realize that people don't always express their real interests or their real values. They say what they think will be attractive to the public at large. Let me give you a very simple example right now. General Motors, one of our major corporations, has come out against the deregulation of the trucking industry. The trucking industry today is grossly overregulated. It never should have been regulated at all. We never should have brought it under the Interstate Commerce Commission.
Stop. The trucking industry is regulated so far beyond that it is not even remotely funny. Every commercial truck that you see on the highway is GPSed. Their commercial logs are monitored. They're micromanaged by various, at least 3 state councils that I can think of, and 3 federal agencies that I can think of. You cannot drive beyond certain hours or you receive a serious fine, and of course there are cams in every commercial big rig that's on the highway right now in a fairly large trucking company. Listen to what he said. Trucking was not meant to be regulated.
It was brought under the Interstate Commerce Commission not to protect the consumer, but to protect the railroads at the time from the competition of trucks when they were first introduced into the 20s. Right now, there's a move underway to deregulate trucking the way airlines have been deregulated. There is nobody doubts that the deregulation of airlines was a very good thing for everybody. The deregulation of trucking would be an equally good thing. There are literally billions of dollars being wasted because of the monopoly in trucking.
You're talking about fees when you talk about deregulation. I assume you would still have some monitor on weight. And can the trucking industry benefit by using highways that I am paying for and may not be using the merchandise?
They don't now. You now have a gasoline tax which covers the costs of the highways. It is appropriate to charge for the use of the highways, of course. They ought not to get a subsidy. I am opposed to subsidies, and I'm opposed to the opposite of the excess taxes. But they do.
Correct on both. Absolutely correct on both. We'll get back to Milton Friedman. Now, last Thursday, I told you that I was going to read an article by Kurt Schlichter, and I didn't have time to do that. But everything that Kurt Schlichter happened to write in this particular article right now is correct. And if you listen to BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon, you know that I'm a fan of Kurt Schlichter. Still want to get him on the show. He's been very busy. I actually contacted Dan Bongino to see if I can get him on the show. His wife responded with a very kind email in effect saying, Dan is so busy, I have to put on his underwear in the morning. This article is by Kurt Schlichter. It comes from townhall.com. Only one day ago, it's every word liberals say about guns is a lie. Let me repeat that because it is so true. Every word liberals say about guns is a lie. Let's start out with a basic premise. If you're a healthy, law-abiding American citizen, you should own and be proficient with effective firearms and have sufficient ammunition on hand to act to defend yourself, your family, your community, and your Constitution. That's what free people do. Of course, it's the people who don't have those tools, backed up by the random goofy vet who tweets pics of himself turning in his personal weapons to baffled and embarrassed law enforcement officers who want to take your firearms from you, which presents certain practical difficulties when push comes to shove. Wait, no, that's crazy talk. No one wants your guns. No one. Stop talking crazy like that, because it's crazy. And that sign the weirdo at the March for Fewer Rights is holding that says Harry Potter would ban assault weapons. What sign? This is just about common sense gun regulations, not gun control. And all the speakers wanting to ban guns. You misheard them. Oh, wait, now, Justice Cryptkeeper has an op-ed in the New York Times called Repeal the Second Amendment. Damn it, he's off message. What op-ed? No one wants to repeal the Second Amendment. Seriously, no one wants to take your guns. There's nothing behind the curtain. Are you going to believe your own lying ears and eyes? Yeah, we are. You know, if liberals propose to gaslight us, to make us think we're insane for seeing what we are looking at, then they really need to be more subtle. But subtlety is not a big thing with the teen titans of tyranny these days. You know, there's a limit to how long you can tolerate having a pack of moppet puppets and their Twitter troll teammates telling you that you have the blood of children on your hands. Spoiler alert. No, you don't have the blood of children on your hands. Here's the deal. Everything the liberals say about guns is a lie. Every single thing. It's a lie when they scream that you can hit the guns-to-go drive-through and buy yourself a full semi-automatic assault machine gun with high-powered 5.56 millimeter rounds, because glorified 5.56 millimeter rounds are high-powered on their planet, faster and quicker than you can call an Uber. It's a lie when they say an armed citizenry would be powerless in the face of a leftist government equipped with tanks and artillery and bombers, though their assumption that a leftist government would use tanks and artillery and bombers on the American people seems like a pretty good reason for having an armed citizenry. It's a lie when they say they only want to have a conversation and seek only bipartisan compromise. Foamy Marco Rubio got suckered into that grift just like Chuck Schumer suckered him into pushing amnesty, and they've been ritually disemboweling him ever since. Bought and paid for by the NRA, wants children murdered, blah, 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 blah. You know the score. He went to that CNN town hall, which seemed more like a dinner theater staging of The Crucible, and tried to be a nice, open-minded guy. And they slaughtered him. There's a reason for you, or a lesson, I should say, for you. Never show these aspiring Red Guards any weakness. Never. They hate us fans of the Constitution for resisting, but at least they have to grudgingly respect that we won't roll over. But Rubio is weak, and he showed his belly, and they despise him for it. By the way, Marco's latest mega fail is his refusal to campaign against Democrat Bill Nelson in the upcoming Senate race. If you need to reach him, he'll be in his GIMP box. Those soft boys like Marco and his fellow submissive Fredo Cons refuse to acknowledge it. The other side's goal is simple. They want us disarmed. But why? They know that normal Americans are perfectly capable of safely owning all kinds of firearms. You slice the Democrat-run blue cities out of the statistics. Listen to this. And America's gun murder rate is comparable to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. They absolutely know that. But that's not even remotely the point. What they cannot abide is us normals being proud and free. To disarm us would forever convert us from citizens to subjects. They get that our identity is wrapped up not in our guns themselves, but in the fact that armed, we have the ability to control our destiny. If necessary, an armed citizenry can tell those who would trample our rights, no, and back it up with force if necessary. Liberals constantly sneer that we are insecure about our masculinity and need guns to feel like men. Leaving aside the millions of gun-owning women out there who don't seem to fit within that stupid paradigm, and the irony of leftist doofs opining on manhood, liberals miss the point. We don't need guns to be men. We need guns to be free men. They yearn to see us humbled. They ache to see us made into serfs. That we defy them is bad enough, but they cannot tolerate that we maintain our dignity. The dignity of a citizen that comes with having a say in your own governance and exercising your rights with neither apology nor limitation, and that we maintain our dignity in the face of their hatred and contempt. They want us disarmed because they want us disenfranchised, discouraged, and no longer obedient. They want us broken. But they can't break us. Even if they had the votes to overturn our constitutional rights, do they think they'd stop at the Second Amendment and not move to the First Amendment next? The fact that a bunch of aspiring dictators erased the words from the parchment mean nothing. Our right to speak and worship freely and our right to keep and bear arms were merely cited by the Constitution. That paper didn't grant them. The government did not grant them, and the government cannot take them away. Every American was endowed with those rights by his Creator, and as long as we have the will to defend our rights, no collection of creeps is ever going to take them away from us. That was the article by Kurt Schlichter, and I read him whenever I can because he's a rather pointed individual and he pulls no punches. And that was from the recent townhall.com article entitled, "Every Word Liberals Say About Guns is a Lie." Folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, there's a book that I held up a little earlier and that I'm going to talk about and read from in just a moment. And if you think that perhaps common sense was dead or that people aren't writing insightful things anymore, I'm going to point you to this book. It's not very big. It's not very expensive. I'm going to get a copy for Sackhead Sean and Sackhead's Clint. I already have mine. And I'm going to recommend that you get a copy. I'm going to tell you what it is. And when I come back and start quoting some of the things inside, I want to tell you, just like it says on the top of bloviatingzeppelin.net, I am pushback. I'm not here for bipartisanship, and I'm not here for compromise. I'm here to be every bit as strident as the leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots don't go away.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever.
because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch River Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians, a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless, hope to the hopeless, clues to the clueless. Sackheads Sean, Sackheads Clint, and Sackheads BZ. The Sackheads Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern on shrmedia.com. Watch on YouTube, Facebook, and the High Plains Pundit Network. The best in late-night conservative talk, the Sackheads Radio Show, only on the SHR Media Network.
Go ahead, I'll say it
again. Some of the best A-roll is going to be B-roll.
Like, what are you talking about? Just the last question really cut a couple seconds. Yeah, I'm a freaking artist. I can't just come up with this shit off the top of my head. Are you freaking kidding me right now?
Hey, good point. Exactly right.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint, and I'm with Sackhead Sean, Sackhead BZ. No communists allowed on the SHR Media Network.
Damn straight, mister.
Back to the show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you're listening to a new show on the weekend. How long it will continue to remain on the weekend is unknown. What I did is just pull it right out of my arse and decide I need a new show. I need an expression to do some things that I don't have time to do every Tuesday and Thursday night here on the SHR Media Network. And I named the show BDR529. And I think if you Google those numbers and letters, you'll have a fairly decent idea as to where they came from. Now, I told you about this particular book that I was going to read from, and I suggest that you go out and get a copy. It's called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. And if you thought people were not writing cogent, insightful, smart books embracing freedom and your rights and the conservative mindset, the free mindset, why, you would be terribly wrong. Now, I'll show it to you right here for those of you who happen to be watching on Facebook Live, the SHR Media Facebook page, also on the SHR Media YouTube channel. It's not an incredibly thick book, and it's not all that incredibly expensive. $7.95. A bargain at twice the price. But this book has some amazing things to say. It's about tyranny and the power that comes from freedom. It's been BZ's contention for quite some time that for a country that says it purports to be so incredibly free, we continue to lose our freedoms by the week, by the month, by the year. And you can hear the clarion call of all the leftists and Democrats and the American media maggots all across the fruited plain in the United Snakes of America saying you need to lose more freedoms. In BZ's opinion, in BZ's world, every bill written would be run through a constitutional committee whose only job is to determine the constitutionality of that bill. It wouldn't go to any other committees. It would go to that committee first. Is this bill constitutional? And if it isn't, gone. Plain as that. We need an amendment into the Constitution indicating that we must have a balanced budget. Now, if you want to do it by percentile of GDP, whatever, fine, you need to do it. We also need to have truth in bills. One bill, one topic, no riders. We also need to have the Transparency in Government Act, and that is to say, every motherfucking thing passed by the federal government through the Senate or the House applies to every individual in the Senate and the House and every federal employee. If it's not good enough for all of them, it's not good enough for us, we the people. It's very, very simple. There are numerous other things. This is just off the top of my head because this show essentially tonight is off the top of my head. Completely contemporaneous. Extemporaneous. And for those of you who may have been on the planet Zephron, although Planet Zephron listens to us quite frequently, at least to me. I don't know about the rest of the people on SHR, but I have a liaison and a diplomatic committee liaison with the planet Zephron. And even they listen to the show, and even they agree the United States, once the bastion of freedom, needs to loosen the fuck up. Wouldn't you agree? I certainly would. In Sacramento, there was a shooting of a young black man. And once that occurred, protesters thought that it would be a wonderful thing to, in concert with what happened in Parkland, Florida, protest, and they haven't quite gone over the top of the hill in terms of mass rioting, although there were broken windows, vandalism, and things like that. And that's simply because part and parcel of California is insane. My magnum opus on that is, in fact, coming, as I indicated before. But in the Sacramento Bee, and it pains me to tell you this, but again, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I worked for McClatchy Broadcasting at KFPK. And I was broadcasting, I've been a broadcaster for many, many years before I came to my sense and actually started to make some money. And then, of course, didn't make money because you really don't do that in law enforcement. But I always decided that I wanted outside jobs, couldn't have an indoor job. And so I transmogrified from radio into law enforcement. And as people who know me know that I've been doing that for 41 years, I retired in 2016. Not that terribly long ago. Hence the beard. I also said a couple of things. Number one, I hate to shave. Number two, I'm never wearing another uniform or another suit again, because that's all I wore for 41 years. Done. Put in my time. Just saying. Sacramento, though, has a newspaper that, as I indicated, is part of the McClatchy organization. The McClatchy organization, at one time in the 70s when I began working for them, had a slew of newspapers, a slew of TV stations that they owned, and a big, big media group. I met Eleanor McClatchy back in the day before she passed away. And all of that stuff in Sacramento was at 21st and Q Street, and the Sacramento Bee, started by the McClatchy organization, still exists. And, of course, there are writers and op-ed people who continue to write pieces, fluff and otherwise, for the Sacramento Bee. And so recently I happened to come across this article from the Sacramento Bee, sacbee.com. I don't know why I said that, but it just popped in off the top of my head. And this article really, what it was trying to do is put me in my place. And I have a difficult time doing that. Meaning, and let's be blunt, me, meaning Caucasoids. The article attempted to put Caucasoids, me, Hence, look, check, melanin count, freely admitted. It wants to put me in my place, okay? After all, the author has so much experience in life today, and thusly, I needed to pay attention to her, right? Okay, here's her article. Here's the headline. Mad about Stephon Clark protesters shutting down the Kings at I-5? Check your privilege. Let me back up. For 3 days running, there were protests in the streets of the city of Sacramento. And for essentially 3 days running, on one day and night, they shut down I-5. After that, no, CHP did not allow them to do that again, although they attempted to do so. What they did instead choose to do as an adjunct to that is shut down entrance to the Sacramento Kings basketball game because it's not terribly far away, and it's situated right in downtown Sacramento, 2 miles away from where I am broadcasting right now. So that's the reference for the background of the article. Mad about Stephon Clark protesters shutting down the Kings and I-5? Check your privilege. Meaning, BZ, you white fucktard, check your privilege. No, I don't do that. The article, by the way, in all candidness, is by Erica D. Smith. She's the associate editor and editorial writer. And she starts, Dear well-meaning progressives of Sacramento. So I hear you're a little upset about the way on last Thursday, some people, people with Black Lives Matter were peacefully protesting the police shooting of Stephon Clark. Peacefully, no, not entirely. Bad form to start off prevaricating. Bad form, Erica. Just thought I'd tell you. I know. You're as troubled as any other woke progressive about his death on Sunday night. The 22-year-old father of two shouldn't have died the way he did, standing in his grandmother's backyard in Meadowview after having been chased down by 2 cops in a helicopter. Oh, do I have more about that story? I don't know if I'll be able to get to it tonight. Progressives? Now, do you think she was really aiming at progressives? Let's see. Do you think she was aiming at Mexican progressives, Asian progressives, black progressives, lesbian progressives, crazed Albanian dwarf progressives? No, Caucasoid progressives, Gaups, guilty, overeducated white people. You think it's unacceptable that the officers didn't identify themselves before shouting gun and sending 20 bullets flying through the dark toward his body, and you're suspicious about why, after the shooting, cops at the scene turned off the microphones on their body cams and had a conversation amongst themselves for a couple of minutes. Erica, here's what I'd love to see you do, baby. I'd love to see you in a uniform. It'd be so cool. Right? What? Not interested? I'd love to hear you monitored for every minute of your work shift. On cam, with audio. What? Not interested? But the Sacramento Kings game, did protesters really have to block Golden One Center in Clark's name? Basketball fans drove all the way downtown and parked in a garage only to find that they couldn't get inside on Thursday night. Protesters had the place surrounded, and then the team locked the doors. Tonight's game began with a delay, the Kings said in a statement, due to law enforcement being unable to ensure ticketed fans could safely enter the arena. The arena remains closed, and we ask fans outside to travel home. Yippers? That's what happened. And Interstate 5, she asks, was it really necessary to march down I Street and onto the highway ramp during rush hour? Rush hour? People have to get home to their families in the suburbs. People have to make dinner. Kids have homework to do and bedtimes to make. Erica? Because in your world, it's unimportant that interstate transport systems remain open. You know, the systems that me and you and everybody else pay for. Fuck us for wanting to use something for which we paid hard-earned taxpayer dollars. How many accidents were caused by the blockage, my dear? Do you know and do you care? How many individuals or families were affected in those accidents? Your protest takes priority, after all. Right? Huh? Heaven forbid. The drug dealers and rapists and cartels and slave traders have their shit delayed across the most important north-south route in California. That is just rude for them to object to that as well. And screw the people who have families, people to whom they are responsible, children who have needs and requirements, parents who may be responding to help their kids. Nuclear families are the worst. They're the worst. Caucasoid families are worse yet. They should sacrifice the most. That's pretty clear. But what about relieving the babysitters from single mothers? Erica, who might be on a critical timetable to take their kids to a doctor to make sure they have their meds in a timely fashion? Oh, what about stopping emergency responders from, well, reacting to calls for service? Fuck it. Fuck them. The needs of the protesters are primary, aren't they? Everyone else can go straight to hell. We can see and we can hear the dripping disdain and incredibly haughty arrogance in your words. And she continues, people have to get home to their families in the suburbs. Parents have to make dinner. Kids have homework to do and bedtimes to make. Like what? Okay, like poor or challenged single mothers don't have families in the suburbs? Like she doesn't have to make dinner? Like you're not costing her at least another critical hour or two on a paycheck? Like you didn't make her late for work and perhaps even cost a job? Like her kids aren't worthy of either homework or bedtimes? Like she was sufficiently stupid to have kids in the first place instead of placing her trust in hot and cold running abortions from Planned Abortionhood? Huh? Erica continues. Well, what's next? Riots? Like you, I agree that violence is never okay. And why do we need Al Sharpton? I get it. I do. Yeah, because, violence never gets attached to these things at all, right? Has there been violence in Sacramento since they started protesting? No. Oh, wait. As one man, you'll love this. As one man told the Bee as he walked away from Golden One Center on Thursday night, his wife and children in tow, I'm very disappointed. I mean, I feel their pain, but why do we have to suffer as well? We paid a lot of money for these tickets. Oh, Erica's lit at this point. And therein lies the rub. Hey, got a question for you listening. Do you think the quote from this guy was black? Huh? Wrong-o, bucko. He was a Caucasoid, and they must pay. And they must pay the most. They must atone. So, let's see. Who pays for the Kings? The city of Sacramento? You think the ACLU pays for the exclusive Kings suites? Hardly. The local taxpayers, ticket purchasers. You think that family has a box or a suite at that game? Don't make me laugh. I'd wager both mother and father, I bet they work very, very hard to save their cash and enjoy one night of entertainment. Further, Erica, you possess no idea what they themselves have gone through in order to get to that point in their lives. Because, after all, let's be frank, you couldn't care less. And she continues. First of all, let's get one thing straight. Being inconvenienced for one day or even two is not suffering. A word I've heard far too many times since Thursday. Suffering is what Clark's family is doing right now. Suffering is what young black men do all over this country, living with the fear of their lives being taken by gun violence. Really? Suffering is what real families of soldiers have to do when their loved ones don't come home. Suffering is what the families of soldiers have to do when their loved ones come back, but their minds do not. Suffering is what those soldiers must do when they have to grapple with whatever conflicts exist within their experiences having served their country. But even more pointedly, suffering is what altogether too many young black males must do when they make stupid damn choices. Their families and their friends included, and living with the fear of their lives being taken by gun violence? Hello? Blacks killing blacks violently in large urban rat cages run by Democrats is so common now these days, it's even a bad cliche. Erica continues. The big question is whether that is evidence that the police are discriminating against African Americans. There's an obvious argument that is. if African Americans are just 13% of the U.S. population, but they get 26% of the people killed by the police. There's another way to look at these numbers. Nearly 50% of convicted murderers in the U.S. are African Americans. Why that number is so high is a difficult question to answer. So the question why African Americans are also far more likely than whites to be murder victims. The point is that if African Americans are more likely to be involved in violent crime, both as perpetrators and victims, then the higher rate of police shootings may not be surprising. In my blog, bloviatingzeppelin.net, I have plenty of stats with regard to this. Okay, so I ask, hey, why stop there? Where are the riots truly representing black-on-black crime? Have you seen any? I don't remember reading any. I don't remember seeing any on TV. I don't remember those occurring. I actually remember hearing someone earlier last week say that to a Caucasoid journalist, there is no such thing as black-on-black crime. Really? That's the mindset of a lot of people out there. Progressives. And like I said, where are the riots? Where have they been for black-on-black crime? Because it sure as shit does exist. So where are they? What about the demands for young black males to refrain from killing each other and surrounding innocent bystanders? Kids, babies, infants that happen to get in the way of a good damn bullet meant for somebody else. Where are the demands for gang members to back off, to surrender their firearms, to come to peaceful terms? Where are the public closures and the freeway blockades for Caucasoids killed by black cops in America? By the way, one of the black cops in that shooting in the city of Sacramento, one of the cops, I should say, was black in that particular shooting. Not that it truly makes much of a difference at all. It actually does until leftists make it matter. And they make it all about the cops. Hey, what about Caucasoids killed by cops? What about Asians killed by cops? What about Mexicans killed by cops? Hey, what about Tongans killed by cops? Lesbians killed by cops? Aren't they deserving of some get back as well? In 2015, of persons killed by police, 732 were white, and 381 were black, and 382 were of another or an unknown race. Roughly twice the number of whites were killed. Where were the blockades and the closures and the riots for the Caucasoids? Yeah. NI, not important at all. So, because a family suffers, that provides a right for the family and its supporters to close a freeway, right? To blockade a public venue. And, oh, wait, it's a family that you're interested in, so that makes you and that family and those supporters more important than anyone and everyone else. I get it. The clouds are parting. It's beginning to sound to me a lot like identity über alles. Nice ring. So, you want to know who has privilege, Erica? You have privilege. Maybe you and the others had best check it. Gosh, okay, what privilege might you have? Oh, right, yeah, the Sacramento Police Department and the CHP taking essentially a hands-off attitude to your little shenanigans on March 22nd. I'm sure they'd have done the same thing for an All Lives Matter event of identical circumstances, because after all, right, all lives matter. Huh? Don't they? No. And I'm sure that would have happened had somebody decided to run a Caucasoid Lives Matter as well. Something tells me not exactly. Not even close. So you write further, and people can read the rest of your article. It's up at bloviatingzeppelin.net if you want to. But my analysis is mostly finished. Unlike the investigation into Stephon Clark's death. But hey, facts coming in yet don't matter. And facts that have not been completely collected in the investigation. But before we go, let's talk about Erica for just a moment. Erica isn't even around here. She hasn't lived her life here. She wasn't born here. She hasn't paid a price to live here. Her perspective is short and shallow. She just decided to drop in one day. Her bio says so. Erica D. Smith joined the Sacramento Bee in May 2015 after spending most of her career in the nebulous Midwest. Her words. Because, after all, the Midwest is just like any other place, right? She previously worked for the Indianapolis Star in Indiana, where as Metro columnist, she covered issues related to neighborhoods, community development, public safety, and diversity. She also worked for 5 years at the Akron Beacon Journal in Ohio. She's a native of Cleveland, so Erica is she is mad invested in Sacramento. Per Twitter, she is a Cleveland native and an urban dweller. Oh, let me guess. The Sacramento Bee paid you more than your past job, Erica, because Sacramento isn't all that urban. But Sacramento is a larger leftist audience than Akron or Indianapolis. It's the capital of the entire state of California. You've reached leftist big time, young lady. Woohoo! There's your investment. Personal career enhancement. And hey, Sacramento isn't far from San Francisco. What a stepping stone that would make for you, Erica, wouldn't it? Eh, what? After a little while, Erica, you have to ask, with such a target-rich environment in California and throughout the U.S., why is it that blacks are so terribly targeted? I mean, after all, you have Jews, you have Muslims. Damn, they both can appear Caucasoid. Well, okay, wait. What about Mexicans? What about Asians? What about Cubans? What about Puerto Ricans? What about Nicaraguans? What about Estonians? I'm sorry. I let some Caucasoids slip in again. My mistake. One thought is because blacks commit per capita just as she's willing to throw in my face, I'm willing to throw right back in her face. Blacks commit per capita more crime than any other melanin counts. According to the Justice Department, blacks die of homicide at 6 times the rate of whites and Hispanics combined. That's because blacks commit homicide at 8 times the rate of whites and Hispanics combined. In the 75 largest counties of the United States, which is where most of the population resides, blacks commit over 50% of all violent crime, though they're 15% of the population in those counties. These crime disparities are repeated in every big American city. Here in New York, blacks commit 75% of all shootings, and though they're 23% of the population. How do we know that? That's what the victims of and witnesses to these shootings, who are overwhelmingly minority themselves, tell the police. So, hey, Erica, you want to know who has the privilege? You have the privilege. You're at least a twofer in California, black and female. Hey, you could be a threefer if you're a lesbian. You could be a fourfer if you're a black male who transitioned to a female and then decided to become a fluid with a biker wallet and a flannel shirt, piercings, and tattoos. Don't forget piercings and tattoos, okay? Very important. They'll look great when you're 80. Remember that. Your photos are rather small, I can't say for certain, and I'm quite willing to admit that, but hey, who am I to judge? When your life revolves solely around identity politics and your rose-colored glasses funnel down to only 2 elements, race and gender, well, then that's what you see. Your reach can never exceed that grasp. But here's the deal, Erica, I'll pay attention to you when you suit up and you enter a squad car to answer police calls for service, when you're a sheepdog and not a sheep like your current self. Erica, tell you what, I'll pay attention to you when you suit up and serve your nation in the military, when you're a sheepdog and not a sheep like your current self. Erica, I'll pay attention to you when you actually have some life experiences to offer which involve immediate life and death critical decisions that have to be made in, well, just a few seconds, the likes of which people and courts have literally years to examine in retrospect at their leisure. Erica, check my privilege? You better check yours, girl. Until that time, Not so much. I'm not impressed. I've said it for years. I've said it literally for years. And it's still true, and it will always be true, Erica. No one is equal until everyone is equal.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is featured on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night for 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. Whilst manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ continues to radically change the world of leftists, one diaper at a time. Stop balancing your checkbooks. Stop cleaning your fish tanks. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is your magnet for truth, justice, obesity, a darkened studio, and late-night freedom. No United States of America freedoms were abridged in the making of this ad.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians, a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless, hope to the hopeless, clues to the clueless. Sackheads Sean, Sackheads Clint, and Sackheads BZ. The Sackheads Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern on SHRmedia.com. Watch on YouTube, Facebook, and the High Plains Pundit Network. The best in late-night conservative talk, the Sackheads Radio Show, only on the SHR Media Network.
Go ahead, I'll say it
again. Some of the best A-roll is going to be evil.
Like, what are you talking about? We just,
the last question we cut in a couple seconds.
Yeah, I'm a freaking artist. I can't just come up with this shit off the top of my head. Are you freaking kidding me right now?
Hey, good point. Exactly right. Oh,
God. Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch River Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint, and I'm with Sackhead Sean, Sackhead BZ. No communists allowed on the SHR Media Network.
Damn straight, mister.
Back to the show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to BDR529, the first show of its kind here on the SHR Media Network, an adjunct show of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon. And you can tell I'm serious. You can tell I'm deadly serious when I do this with my glasses, just like the commercial. That's why you need to watch us live on Facebook, and you need to watch us live on the YouTube channel, the SHR Media YouTube channel. Now, I was shamelessly plugging this book by a guy named Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I'll read just a little bit of it to give you the tone and flavor of the book. It starts out this way, prologue, History and Tyranny. History does not repeat, but it does instruct. As the Founding Fathers debated our Constitution, they took instruction from the history they knew. Concerned that the democratic republic they envisioned would collapse, they contemplated the descent of ancient democracies and republics into oligarchy and empire. As they knew, Aristotle warned that inequality brought instability, while Plato believed that demagogues exploited free speech to install themselves as tyrants. In founding a democratic republic upon law and establishing a system of checks and balances, the Founding Fathers sought to avoid the evil that they, like the ancient philosophers, called tyranny. They had in mind the usurpation of power by a single member or a group, or the circumvention of law by rulers for their own benefit. Much of the succeeding political debate in the United States has concerned the problem of tyranny within American society over slaves and women, for example. It is thus a primary American tradition to consider history when our political order seems imperiled. If we worry today that the American experiment is threatened by tyranny, we can follow the example of the Founding Fathers and contemplate the history of other democracies and republics. The good news is that we can draw upon more recent and relevant examples than ancient Greece or Rome. The bad news is that the history of modern democracy is also one of decline and fall. Since the American colonies declared their independence from a British monarchy that the founders deemed tyrannical, European history has seen three major democratic moments. First, after the First World War in 1918, after the Second World War in 1945, and after the end of communism in 1989. Many of the democracies founded in those junctures failed, in circumstances that are, in some important respects, resemble our own. History can familiarize, and it can warn. In the late 19th century, just as in the late 20th century, the expansion of global trade generated expectations of progress. In the early 20th century, as in early 21st, these hopes were challenged by new visions of mass politics, in which a leader or party claimed to directly represent the will of the people. European democracies collapsed into right-wing authoritarianism and fascism in the 1920s and 30s. The Communist Soviet Union, established in 1922, extended its model into Europe in the 1940s. The European history of the 20th century shows us that societies can break, democracies can fall, ethics can collapse, and ordinary men can find themselves standing over death pits with guns in their hands. It would serve us well today to understand why. Stop. I'm going to continue with this article. However, does that sound anything even remotely like one of the possible and myriad of reasons why so many people like myself are so strident about their support of the Bill of Rights, specifically the Second Amendment, because we know once the Second Amendment goes, so goes the First Amendment. Both are under assault today. Both fascism and communism were responses to globalization, to the real and perceived inequalities it created, and the apparent helplessness of the democracies in addressing them. Stop. I had Lily Tang Williams on the show last year. I gave her a full 2 hours. She lived and grew up in communist China. She came to America because she wanted freedom, desired freedom, and loves freedom. She ran for Senate in Colorado. Hers is an amazing story. In your favorite search engine, type Bloviating Zeppelin, Lily Tang Williams. You can hear the entire 2 hours of her story. And if you want to hear a clarion cautionary tale about what could happen to the United States and what she had to endure in communist China, give that a listen. Put it on your speakers. Go balance your checkbook. Go clean your fish tank. You can listen to it while you're doing those things. Give what she says a very important listen. Both fascism and communism were responses to globalization, to the real and perceived inequalities it created, and the apparent helplessness of the democracies in addressing them. Fascists rejected reason in the name of will, denying objective truth in favor of a glorious myth articulated by leaders who claim to give voice to the people. They put a face on globalization, arguing that its complex challenges were the result of a conspiracy against the nation. Fascists ruled for a decade or two, leaving behind an intact intellectual legacy that grows more relevant by the day. Communists ruled for longer, for nearly 7 decades in the Soviet Union, and more than 4 decades in much of Eastern Europe. They proposed rule by a disciplined party elite with a monopoly on reason that would guide society towards a certain future according to supposedly fixed laws of history. Let's see. Lily, if you're with me here right now, would you tell me that China rewrote history? As a matter of fact, yes, China rewrote history. Ask yourself then, is history being rewritten here in the United States? I think you'd have to say yes. We might be tempted to think that our democratic heritage automatically protects us from such threats. This is a misguided reflex. In fact, the precedent set by the founders demands that we examine history to understand the deep sources of tyranny and to consider the proper responses to it. Americans today are no wiser than the Europeans who saw democracy yield to fascism, Nazism, or communism in the 20th century. Our one advantage is that we might learn from their experience. Now's a good time to do so. And then he says this book presents 20 lessons from the 20th century adapted to the circumstances of today. I will refer to this book. On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. You got to go out and quick like a bunny, go get yourself a copy of it. There were so many other news stories that were going on that I had to talk about them here. Unfortunately, another one of them involves law enforcement. As I told you, I spent 41 years in law enforcement. I am a great law enforcement supporter. When I can support law enforcement. When law enforcement fucks up, and it does, I'm one of the biggest critics of law enforcement. When that individual, the law enforcement officer back east, I can't remember the jurisdiction, but there was clear video of this guy running from the law enforcement officer, and in very clear daylight, he shot the guy in the back. That officer was convicted of murder. When you let the system work, it tends to work. We have the beginning, in my opinion, however, of the beginnings of a systemic failure. Here's another failure, and this is from law enforcement. Well, stop just a second. You're going to hear some tales a little bit later of the FBI. They're law enforcement. I worked for the FBI. When they do great work, I'm the first to give them grand accolades. When they fuck up, I'm the first to present that to everyone here as well. Historically, and way too commonly recently, they've really screwed the pooch. And I suspect that's systemic from the top down. And I believe that's systemic from the top down in the City of Sacramento Police Department, which is now on a perfect level and even playing field with the City of Berkeley Police Department and the University of California, Davis Police Department, who were told to stand down. And I think we're going to find out, I'm going to find out, if certain members of the City of Sacramento Police Department were told to stand down, because I have it on good fact that 100 City of Sacramento police officers stood by as protests occurred And I have it on good faith that as a CHP officer was calling for Code 3 immediate assistance cover here in the city of Sacramento because the capital is under the jurisdiction of the California Highway Patrol, which is a state organization, and one of the CHP officers asked for an immediate response from law enforcement, and the city of Sacramento has historically covered CHP. When that officer during the protests asked for cover for a van that was involved in the protests, not one SAC PD unit responded. So here's an article that's of incredible concern. If cops can't be safe because of political correctness, can you be safe? Can you be safe in any leftist jurisdiction like the city of Sacramento, the city of Berkeley, the city of San Jose, UCD campuses? Can that occur? Here's another story. This is from Fast Company, which generally has to do with corporations. Raleigh police are asking Google to provide user data for all people near crime scenes. Let me read that over to you again. Digest it just for a moment, if you will. Raleigh police in North Carolina are asking Google, and you know what Google is, to provide user data for all people near crime scenes. Can that be done? Can that be found out? It's Google. Of course it can. Are you carrying a cell phone? You probably have the GPS on, don't you? And the phone itself is always on, isn't it? And the phone is always listening to you, isn't it? And the video aspect, the camera of that phone is always on, isn't it? Oh, well, you'd say no, wouldn't you? Except you'd be wrong. Police in Raleigh, North Carolina have presented Google with warrants to obtain data from mobile phones from not just specific suspects who were in a crime scene area, but from the mobile phones of all people in the area, reports Raleigh television affiliate WRAL. I'm incensed, but I'm going to continue and then chime in. The request will trouble Fourth Amendment advocates like me, as it could be seen that police are carrying out unreasonable searches on people who just happened to be in the area at the time the crimes were committed. And the area sizes the police requesting the data on are not small. In one instance, police requested user data from Google for anyone within a 17-acre area. For its part, Google has not revealed whether it has complied with the police request. Now, at this point, that's the end of the article. Let's go back to BZ's days. BZ was a detective in the 90s for a large Northern California Sheriff's Department, 2,000-plus members. And when I was a detective, I'll be honest, I was in theft. I was shipped temporarily to homicide to help work some cases. I came back to theft. I went to child abuse. I went to warrants. I went to sex assaults. I went to robbery, and then I concluded my detective time in homicide. That was in 94, 95, 96, and 97, and the reason that I transitioned from robbery to homicide is that all my robbery suspects were essentially all of homicide's suspects as well. Shootings? I happened to be working when shootings and gun crime was at the all-time highest in the United States of America. But wait. Now, if I couldn't immediately arrest someone as the result of a crime, then I had to submit for a warrant of arrest. And along the way, in order to prove a particular crime, I had to acquire evidence, statements, exculpatory, everything as well, everything included. And I had to go where the investigation took me. I could not go fishing. I could not throw out lines. And if I wanted to get search warrants, I had to apply on an affidavit to a court, to a specific judge, to have it signed and then executed, and then I had to return the service to the court. on every search warrant I wanted. And I had to do that with suspects as well. How can law enforcement in general, get away with a 17-acre search, and it's a fucking fishing expedition? Make no mistake about it, that's what it is. To just go sifting through people's records. They don't know names. They have no individuals. They have no specific people. They have an area first. Oh, the names, fuck it, that can come later. Does that bother you? Do you think it's okay? And I'm sure there are some people that might be in this audience right now watching live, which might be 2 people. And that's absolutely immaterial. With luck, I'll get a lot of people on podcast. But there might be some people who say, you know what, if I'm not committing any crimes, why should I care? Well, ever hear of the domino theory? It's very true in most any aspect of life. If you've lived life, if you have experience in life, you know how those things tend to move. And certainly it's been used in arguments before saying that law enforcement specifically should not be able to go on said fishing expeditions. If the fat guy had to get a warrant for evidence, search for evidence, or an arrest warrant for persons, why shouldn't the rest of law enforcement? That's how it works in a free nation. That's how it should work in a free nation. So this article, to me, is incredibly frustrating and potentially very shocking. Well, is shocking to me. And it opens up a host of possibilities. To me, a conservative and a libertarian, sort of a little L libertarian, but a libertarian nevertheless. I don't trot I'm not with everything that the libertarians are for. I'm not for hot and cold running drugs and free and open borders. Fuck that. But I have some serious concerns. Once you chip away at a freedom, ladies and gentlemen, when you chip away at a freedom, how frequently is it that you can count those freedoms having returned after having taken just a bit of a detour? Nothing to see. Close the curtains. There's nobody back there. Pay no attention to the people behind the curtain. That's an evil story, and I don't care for it. Here's another story. And I told you about this, and I talked about it on the Sackheads. And I'm just throwing it out there, just throwing it up to the tree to see if it sticks, but mostly to see what it is that you may think about this. Trump letter surfaces believed to prove Trump sneaked wall funding into spending bill. Remember the omnibus bill? And people that are reading my social media, I said, you know what? I believe that there is a distinct difference between an omnibus spending bill and something that people quantify as a budget. That historically speaking, and we know it well and truly, it certainly occurred in California, and I would certainly guess throughout the rest of the states, definitely in the federal government, when things are allegedly earmarked to go into certain budgets. Isn't that funny how frequently, altogether too frequently, a lot of that cash just rains freely into the general fund? And then people can go in and sack and pillage at will out of the general fund. Funny how that works out. When President Trump signed the ridiculous and massive $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill on Friday, he himself decried the wasteful spending and giveaways to Democrats that had been tucked into the legislation, which he also vowed to never sign another bill like it. Many conservatives were also incensed at the obscene spending bill, most notably due to continued taxpayer funding for abortion provider Planned Abortionhood. Like me, not happy with that. And sanctuary cities, but also because it seemed like Democrats completely blocked Trump's efforts at building a wall to secure the southern border, granting him a paltry $1.6 billion to repair existing border fences. The lone obvious bright spot of the spending bill was the ample funding, more than had been requested actually, for the military, which Trump repeatedly made note of. So, just throwing it out here. While many of the people with their hair on fire appeared to jump off the Trump train in dismay as Democrats cheerfully crowed about how they'd stymied a major part of Trump's agenda, others kept a level head and began to dig deeper into the 2,200-plus pages and all referenced statutes mentioned therein in search of some hidden reason why the president had signed this bloated spending bill into law instead of sending it back with a veto, which at one point on Twitter he said that morning he may veto. That search was bolstered somewhat by a letter sent on Saturday from the White House to both chambers of Congress, which cited a specific statute from the funds governing 1985 Budget Control Act in relation to a specific section of the new spending bill and declared that certain funding had been designated as an emergency requirement, which some believe grants the president legal authority to shift funds around and prioritize spending, or even not spend it at all. Certain funds in relation to declared emergencies, in this case specifically as they pertain to national defense. Folks, from that, I think you can do the logical conclusion and what I'm attempting to submit right here. Then there was this. Was kind of touted for a while. We got about another 3 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Documents suggest possible coordination between CIA, FBI. Let me read this again because it's pretty important. Documents suggest possible coordination. Do you mean collusion? Collusion, BZ? Collusion? Between CIA, FBI, Obama White House, and Democrat officials early in the Trump-Russia probe. So say investigators. Really?
This is another Fox News alert. We're getting late word tonight on reaction to text messages thought lost, but just found at the center of bias allegations against two former members of the Mueller special counsel team. Questions surrounding the FBI. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here tonight with how all this came together. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Brett. Writing to FBI Director Christopher Wray, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, says texts from October 2016 suggest then FBI Director James Comey's chief of staff, Jim Rybicki, believed Deputy Director Andrew McCabe should recuse himself from the Clinton email case. McCabe's wife got more than $700,000 from Democrats, including longtime Clinton ally Terry McAuliffe, for a state Senate race. FBI lawyer Lisa Page writes, Rybicki just called to check in. He very much 100% believes that Andy should be recused because of the perception. Agent Peter Strzok replies, God. Later, Strzok writes, I assume McAuliffe picked up, but that doesn't make sense. He said he was interviewing. Maybe he's headed into private practice. McCabe did not recuse himself until 1 week before the presidential election. The new concerns about the Bureau's impartiality come on the same day new texts are confirmed.
And by the way,
writing to the senior senators with oversight,
let's not forget, James Comey said, hey, McCabe, he didn't do anything wrong. Not at all. There was no conflict of interest.
Justice Department Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, who first discovered the anti-Trump texts between demoted FBI agent Peter Strzok and reassigned FBI lawyer Lisa Page, said a forensic review recovered records between December 2016 and May. The letter did not fully explain why senators were told in August the inspector general had everything, only to learn last week that thousands of records were missing. Before traveling to Switzerland during an impromptu discussion with reporters,
why would records be missing?
The president chastised some media for avoiding the story.
I do worry when I look at all of the things that you people don't report about with what's happening. If you take a look at, the 5 months worth of missing texts, that's a lot of missing texts.
As the texts were apparently found, the political rhetoric over the 4-page memo documenting alleged government surveillance abuse took a new turn. With the House Intelligence Committee's Republican chairman, whose staff drafted the memo, traveling overseas, the ranking Democrat drafted his own version and took a swipe at the media who are covering the allegations.
They didn't care what was in the underlying documents. They wanted to make a political statement. They wanted to feed the beast on Fox News. They wanted to do what they could to
Fox News, the evil beast, Fox News.
Derail the Mueller investigation.
A former FBI agent elected to the House as a Republican said the Democrats' national security concerns are overblown.
I've read the memo along with several of my colleagues. In my estimation, having had exposure and experience with both FISA and Title III wiretaps, that there are no law enforcement sensitive sources or methods that would be compromised here.
In a letter, the Justice Department expressed its own reservations, calling any release of the memo unprecedented and reckless. The FBI and Justice Department want a review before it goes public.
Let us see it first. At this point, nobody in the Senate or the White House or the Department of Justice or FBI has seen this document.
Though the senators can't read the document, the minority leader weighed in.
Today, it's this memo. On and on and on. Conspiracy theories with virtually no fact.
Some Republicans were pressed on the wisdom of releasing the memo.
When the public begins to question the integrity of the department and the FBI and conclude in the absence of other information that somehow politics has taken over rather than the law, that's a very serious matter, and we need to get that cleared up through one means or another.
Here's a funny thing about all of this. Isn't it odd, isn't it weird that over the years, it's leftists who have always said the FBI is so evil and mean and oppressive? How does that happen? How does that happen? And now, oddly enough, it's the FBI that they are themselves being oppressed. How does that happen?
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com. And maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch River Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Hey guys, this is Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Check us out every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network.
And this is Sackhead Clint as the best-looking one of the bunch. It's my duty to remind you to check us out on our YouTube channel.
And don't forget to check us out on the SHR Media Facebook page. The best-looking one? Really? You going to go there?
Every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on the
SHR Voters' Choice.
Media.
I have the award
Fine.
right here.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
This is Sam on SHR Media. You can listen to my new show starting on Tuesdays in January. Get my perspective on national politics, a conservative's perspective on California politics, the latest in the war on terror, all of that and a lot more here on Tuesdays at SHR Media. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sam_SHR Media.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through SHRmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's
no surrender ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show.
And Sackheads BZ.
Wait, I'm Sean.
No, I'm Sean.
All right, listen, we'll figure this out every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on the...
Where the hell is Clint?
On the SHR Media Network, www.shrmedia.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Now, right back to this amazing show right here on the SHR Media Network.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to BDR529, just like it says right back here. Look up the reference on your favorite search engine. This is a show that I just cobbled together for the fuck of it because I couldn't get all of this stuff and its buttery political goodness packed into my other shows, and I may make something of a semi-regular attempt at doing a weekend show, depending on how particularly motivated I am and whether or not SHR in its infinite wisdom, meaning that I have to ask either Mom or Dad, Sean or Clint, if I can have time right here on the SHR Media Network. For now, though, however, hook 'em horns. Thanks for listening, Dan Butcher. But I was talking about an article. Documents suggest possible coordination between CIA, FBI, Obama White House, and Dem officials early in Trump-Russia probe, so say investigators. What are they referencing? Newly uncovered text messages between FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, suggesting there is a possible coordination between high-ranking officials at the Obama White House, the CIA, the FBI, the Justice Department, and stop. Talk to the hand. Wasn't it the Democrats and the leftists and the American media maggots who were telling us in all earnestness that we need to trust the alphabet agencies and that they have no political biases whatsoever? Except that when they're saying and insisting that they have no political biases, we're finding out more and more that yes, apparently they do have an arseload of political biases. And again, I say, can you imagine what we would not know had Hillary Clinton won the election on November 8th? It's to the point now where I'm saying, thank God she mentally could not transition from November 8th to November 9th and decided to create out of whole cloth the Trump-Russia collusion theory, which, like a row of dominoes, is consistently beginning to prove the only collusion around here, boys and girls, was that between the Democrats and leftists and the American media maggots against Donald Trump. That was the only collusion. That was the only bias. James Clapper, liar. Liar. Brennan, liar. Liar. And they're the ones that are up on the podium pointing their fingers at you, saying, J'accuse. Bad. Oh, and James Comey getting up on his 6'8" high horse and saying, shame on you for questioning the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the alphabet agencies at all. No, that can't happen. The investigators say the information provided to Fox News strongly suggests coordination between former President Barack Hussein Obama's chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, then Senate Democrat leader Harry Reid, and CIA Director John Brennan, which they say would contradict the Obama administration's public stance about its hand in the process. Page texted Strzok on August 2nd, 2016, saying, make sure you can lawfully protect what you sign. Just thinking about Congress, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, etc. You probably know better than me. A text message from Strzok to Page on August 3rd described former FBI Director Andrew McCabe as being concerned with, quote, information control related to the initial investigation into the Trump campaign. According to a report from the New York Times, Brennan was sent to Capitol Hill around the same time to brief members of Congress on the possibility of election interference. Days later, on August 8, 2016, Strzok texted Page, internal joint cyber CD intel piece for D, scene setter for Madonna brief, Trainer, head of the FBI cyber division, directed all cyber info be pulled. I'd let Bill and Jim hammer it out first, though it would be better for D to have it before the Wednesday White House session. In the texts, D refers to FBI Director James Comey, and the McDonough referred to is Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough, the GOP investigators said. We're not making conclusions. What we are saying is the timeline is concerning enough to warrant the appointment of an independent investigator to look at whether or not the Obama White House was involved in the Trump-Russia investigation, a GOP congressional source told Fox News. Unfortunately, at least in this point, Jeffy Sessions has decided that there will be no second special counsel. At least he equivocated a bit and said, for now. And then we know that the Inspector General report is going to be coming out, being issued in the not too terribly distant future. And the IG, according to Judge Napolitano, he believes the Inspector General is going to find what he called a treasure trove of abuses by the DOJ.
All right, well, the Inspector General officially launching a probe into accusations of surveillance abuses in the DOJ and FBI.
This is not a simple move for the Inspector General to make, to go after the top people in the FBI.
You can't have the most important law enforcement organization in the world conducting itself in the manner it did in 2016 and on into 2017.
Perfect. Exactly. Precisely.
Our next guest says the Inspector General's probe can't come soon enough. Here to explain, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, couldn't agree with you more on this because we've been talking about it for so long.
Right.
Why didn't this investigation happen?
Well, you know, just a little bit of background. The FBI was never perfect, made up of human beings that have political aspirations and political ideas. But when it was confined just to law enforcement, it knew how to do its job. After 9/11, when the FBI was moved into intelligence gathering as well as law enforcement, the abuses began to ramp up. It's not just Andrew McCabe. By the time McCabe got there, the concept of, you want a warrant? Go to FISA. They issue any warrant you want. That attitude amongst FBI and intelligence officials in the NSA was so rampant they all did it. Hence...
Stop. Just for a moment. Just stop. Let's back up and put some perspective on this. As I said, I used to work for the FBI. I used to get pen registers. I used to get Title IIIs. All right, so I have a little bit of an idea about what these folks are talking about and how it was that the FBI goes about doing these things. But I want to make one distinct and clear difference that perhaps I need to emphasize with more regularity, and that's this. When I excoriate law enforcement, or I point my finger in a damning fashion at the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, any other alphabet agency, for the most part I'm talking not about the line-level agents and officers attempting to do their job, although although, of course, we know they have their squirrels as well, seen it. I'm mostly talking about mid-management to upper management to complete management individuals whose motivations are incredibly craven, cowardly, and politically corrupt. More so these days, becoming more and more. In law enforcement, I am becoming more increasingly upset and distraught with the way that they are told or willingly inject their own political biases into what it is that they do. Because I still speak to FBI agents and I still speak to law enforcement officers, and many of them, most of them, hate what has happened to their FBI and their other law enforcement agencies. I just had to tell you, let me make sure that there is a clear understanding that I am delineating the difference between the chiefs and the Indians. Please make no mistake about that.
Of the FISA court awarding 99.9% of all warrants requested.
Which one didn't they?
Grand jury, ham sandwich.
The first Trump one they didn't approve. It was so thin.
Right. In my prior life, I signed arrest warrants. This was not for this kind of surveillance. It was to break the...
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there just for a second. You need to understand this as well. The FISA warrant that they're talking about, even though it's grand jury, ham sandwich, some FBI agent went into a FISA court and went plump, hey, look at this, sign it. The judge said, you're handing me a ham sandwich, and I want to hand back to you a ham sandwich with cheese that I approve of, but I don't like the looks of this ham sandwich. That's when the FBI went back, added the Steele dossier to it in order to further acquire the warrant, the FISA warrant, that it turns out was for Carter Page, who, despite Mueller's special counsel and a host of attorneys arrayed against him, not one molecule of a finger pointed at Carter Page. And again, I just want to make the very distinct difference with the reasoning for that. That's where the FISA warrant came in. That's where the dossier came in, because the first time, as Judge Napolitano indicates, the judge said, come back with more. More, they said, the FBI said, oh, okay, we'll find more for you.
Down a door to arrest somebody before they destroyed the evidence. I never heard of a ratio, a number that high, 99.9%, because FISA meets in secret. It kept lowering the standards, and FBI people who knew they couldn't get a warrant from a judge like me, where the standard is probable cause of crime, go to FISA, where the standard is probable cause of talking to a foreign person. I believe that the Inspector General will find a...
Included in part of that warrant, by the way, folks, was a Yahoo News article. That's how the standards have sunk, the rate at which standards have sunk for the FBI to include as evidence a Yahoo article? Are you fucking kidding me? No, I'm not.
A treasure trove. Not just McCabe and company, but that is the most extreme violation we know of, because the target, the victim, is the President of the United States, though he was a candidate and then President-elect at the time. But he will find a treasure trove of abuses, going to FISA, getting warrants when the law did not justify
Does the IG
Thank
have
you
enough
very
power
much.
to get to the bottom of it, or does it require a second special counsel?
I don't know the answer to that, Pete. We all know that the IG can't charge, he can't indict. And quite frankly, the best investigations are those where the investigator has the ability to drag you before a grand jury, and the IG doesn't have that as well. The IG...
Okay, now why is that important? It's important because a lot of the players in this have already retired or moved on, to include Andrew McCabe, big player, to include James Comey, big player, to include Eric Holder, big player, to include Loretta Lynch, big player, and Hillary Clinton, big player, all not working for the United States government right now. That's the difference between an IG and, say, a special counsel who can do that sort of thing, lay down a subpoena immediately in front of your face, as Robert Mueller has done for some time now.
Is limited to human beings that work for the government. So he can't subpoena you or me, even if we knew something about it, because we don't work for the government.
So, big story yesterday, the New York Times had it. They said that they have reports, multiple sources that shows that John Dowd, now the former lawyer for President Trump, went up to Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort and offered him pardon. Here's the quote. That's what he's offered him pardon, number one. This is their explanation about the story. So I've only been asked about pardons by the press, and I've routinely responded to, on the record, that no pardons are under discussion or under consideration at the White House. But that's Ty Cobb answering.
Right. So that's the lawyer that's still there. That's not the lawyer who left, who the New York Times and, quite frankly, other sources with which many of us are familiar have alleged was involved with the pardon. As we were discussing during the break, it depends on if this happened, and I believe it did. It depends on what was in the lawyer's mind. So if he was saying, look, General Flynn has suffered enough, Manafort has suffered enough, let's just end this for them. Look at all they did for you when you were a candidate, Mr. President. That is a perfectly legitimate, rational, and expected basis for a pardon. Pity.
Understand that.
Friendship. But if the purpose of this was, my God, what are they going to tell Bob Mueller? That could very well be an independent crime of obstruction of justice. Right, Brian. It depends on, just like we don't know the look on your face when you're doing a read when the camera's not on you and complaining to producers about it, we don't know what's in his mind when he offers these pardons.
By the way, they went out and did a deal anyway. Doesn't that say something about what was offered?
Yes, they did. And Rick Gates is telling a lot to Bob Mueller, including this latest thing that Mueller revealed 2 days ago about a Russian agent communicating with the campaign. More to come.
All right.
Judge, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
More to come, but what?
The Inspector General officially launching a probe into accusations.
What is the there? Is there a there? I think that's all. Very interesting. We recently had the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C., did we not? Yes, we did. There's an article that I find most interesting. We got about 7 minutes left before the end of the show, and I wanted to make sure that I included this, because here are some statistics that are anomalous, that are in conflict with what everyone was ostensibly told about those persons attending this recent march. We got to get rid of guns off the street, etc. And it was all these young people who were there. All these young people came for miles around to march in Washington, D.C. And then the Washington Post had the temerity to write an article which says, here's who actually attended the March for Our Lives. No, it wasn't mostly young people. Wait a minute. If only I had a producer, no, it wasn't mostly young people. What a shock. An amazing shock, but still the Washington Post published it anyway. Here comes the WAPO. In the days before and after, more than 2 million Americans participated in the March for Our Lives. The gun violence conversation is focused on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas survivors and their student movement. The school shooting in Parkland, Florida, and the passion of the teenage survivors has become a catalyst for the current movement, with the help of some well-resourced benefactors, including Oprah Winfrey and George Clooney and George Soros. Let me throw that in too. Very important. The survivors organized an extraordinary rally in D.C. and sister marches across the country in a mere 6 weeks. However, the young faces of the advocates have created an assumption that youth and students are the core of the movement. My research tells a different story, and my research, the article is by Dana R. Fisher. I must give attribution. My research tells a different story about who participated in the March for Our Lives, and it is more complicated and less well-packaged for prime time. As part of my research for the American Resistance, I've been working with a research team to survey protesters at all the large-scale protest events in Washington since President Trump's inauguration. By snaking through the crowd and sampling every fifth person at designated increments within the staging area, we are able to gather a field approximation of a random sample. So far, the data set includes surveys collected from 1,745 protest participants. During the March for Our Lives, my team sampled 256 people who were randomly selected. This gives us the chance to provide evidence about who attended the March for Our Lives and why. Like other resistant protests, And like previous gun control marches, the March for Our Lives was mostly women. Whereas the 2017 Women's March was 85% women, the March for Our Lives was 70% women. Further, participants were highly educated. 72% had a BA or higher. Contrary to what's been reported in many media accounts, the D.C. March for Our Lives crowd was not primarily made up of teenagers. Only about 10% of the participants were under 18. The average age of the adults in the crowd was just under 49 years old, which is older than participants at the other marches I've surveyed, but similar to the age of the average participant at the Million Moms March in 2000, which was about gun control. Participants were also more likely than those at recent marches to be first-time protesters. About 27% of participants in the March for Our Lives had never protested before. This group was less politically engaged in general. Only about a third of them had contacted an elected official in the past year, while about three-quarters of the more seasoned protesters had. Even more interesting, the new protesters were less motivated. Just a few minutes left. This is the important part. This is why I'm throwing this out here. Even more interesting, the new protesters were less motivated by the issue of gun control. In fact, only 12% of the people who were new to protesting reported that they were motivated to join the march because of the gun control issue, compared with 60% of the participants with experience protesting. Instead, new protesters reported being motivated by the issues of peace, 56%, and Trump, 42%, who has been a galvanizing force for many protests, meaning, just as you and I already most fervently suspected, and is pretty much being concerned, it's all about Trump. It's all about the guy with the dead orange cat on top of his head. Protesting about guns, kind of ancillary. Really, it's starting to turn out. March for Our Lives protesters were also more likely to identify as ideologically moderate. About 16% did so, higher than any other protest event since the inauguration. But unsurprisingly, it was still a very liberal crowd. 79% identified as left-leaning, and 89% reported... Okay. Not a shocker coming. 89% reported voting for Hillary Clinton. Thus, in some aspects, the March for Our Lives mobilized a broader group, including many new protesters and more moderates than some previous marches. But a remaining question is whether this event will catalyze further action either on gun control or on other issues, as other large-scale demonstrations have. All very well and good, all very true. I think everybody has a pretty good idea about my stand in terms of the Second Amendment. And I've said it before, perhaps I need to emphasize it once more, and it goes like this. If a student were to come up to me today, a student, that's a wide term, but if a student, air quote, were to come up to me today and say, what's the life of a student worth? And is it worth your Second Amendment? My response would be to that student as it would be to my wife, who completely agrees with me. I can only sum it up in 3 words. I don't care. I'm not giving up my Second Amendment, not for you, not for me, not for my wife, for no one. I don't care how old you are. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care your sexual identity. I don't care about any of that. I'm not giving up my Second Amendment rights, because my Second Amendment rights protect my First Amendment rights, which then protects my Fourth Amendment rights, and all the rest of the Bill of Rights. And from that stems the Second Amendment, and why I am a staunch, and will always be, a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this has been the first ever episode of BDR529. You can make it be anything you want. What I said was, it's the show where the stories are made up and the points don't matter. Remember, this is an exhibition and not a competition, so please, folks, no wagering.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob. Go back to sleep.